Welcome to a chapter a day. You may not like hearing this at first, but you are not disconnected from Source. You're not blocked. You're not abandoned. You're not waiting for permission from the universe to receive love, abundance, or clarity. The truth is far more unsettling and far more empowering. You are already inside the frequency of Source, but you are interpreting it through distortion. Every moment you feel unworthy, every moment you think you are behind, every moment you believe love must be earned. You are not seeing reality clearly. You are seeing a filtered version of it shaped by conditioning, repetition, and inherited belief systems. And here is the part most people never question. Source has never changed its position toward you. There is no punishment, no delay, no withholding. Only your perception moves you closer or further from alignment. Think about that for a moment. If love is unconditional, then the only thing blocking it is the belief that it can be blocked. So what if the struggle you feel is not evidence of separation, but evidence of misalignment with how you are interpreting yourself? What if your entire life is not about becoming worthy, but remembering that worth was never removed? Over the next 3 hours, you're going to see something clearly that most people never do. Not a new belief, a correction in perception. And if something inside you feels like it is resisting this idea, good. That resistance is exactly where we begin. Chapter 1. You are not separate. You are misaligned with Source frequency. Slow down here. Not because this is complicated, but because your mind needs space to recognize what it has been rushing past for years. Because what you are about to hear is not new information, it is recognition. And recognition only lands when the noise inside you gets quiet enough to let it in. You're not separate from Source. Let that land first, before you try to interpret it. You're not separate from the intelligence that animates life. You are not separate from the field that holds awareness itself. You are not separate from the presence you have spent your entire life trying to feel closer to. The feeling of separation you experience is not evidence of distance, it is evidence of misalignment. Nothing is missing, only misaligned. Nothing is missing, only misaligned. And the repetition matters, because your mind has been trained to believe in absence more than it believes in presence. But absence is not something that exists in the way you think it does. Absence is what consciousness feels like when it is filtered through distortion. Now, look at your everyday life. The moments of stress, the moments of overthinking, the moments where your mind says, something is wrong, something is off, something is not enough. These are not random emotional states. They are signals, not punishment, not failure. Signals of frequency mismatch. Think about it for a moment. When your phone is not connected to a network, it does not mean the network is gone. It means alignment is missing. The signal exists, but reception is interrupted. In the same way, Source is not something you connect to externally. It is something you become receptive to internally. And this is where most people misunderstand everything. They assume the distance they feel is spiritual, but it is actually perceptual. They assume they are far from love, but they are actually filtered out of awareness of it. Now pause for a moment and ask yourself something honestly. How many times have you felt behind in life and believed that feeling meant something was objectively wrong? How many times have you experienced anxiety and treated it as truth instead of translation? Because here is the subtle shift that changes everything. You are not experiencing life directly. You are experiencing life through interpretation, and interpretation is shaped by conditioning. This means two people can stand in the same moment and experience two completely different realities, not because reality changed, but because frequency did. Nothing is missing, only misaligned. Now let's go deeper. When you feel disconnected, what is actually happening? You are being pulled into identification with thought. Thought that says, I am not where I should be. I am not enough yet. Something is missing before I can feel whole. But notice something very carefully here. Those thoughts always point to a future condition where wholeness will finally arrive. They never describe a present reality. And that is the illusion. Because Source is not located in the future. It is not waiting at the end of achievement. It is the field you are already inside of, interpreting incorrectly. Now here is the quiet truth most people resist. If Source is always present, why do we feel absence? Let that question sit. Do not rush to answer it. Because the answer is not intellectual, it is perceptual. And we will go deeper into this in Chapter 3, where we uncover why Source does not respond to fear-based identity the way the mind expects it to. But for now, stay here. Stay with this recognition. You're not trying to reach something. You're learning to stop filtering out what is already here. Now bring this into your daily life for a moment. When you wake up stressed, that is misalignment. When you compare yourself to others, that is misalignment. When you feel behind in life, that is misalignment. Not moral misalignment, not spiritual punishment. Frequency misalignment. And frequency is not something you force. It is something you notice. And then gradually, stop resisting. Now ask yourself one final reflection before we continue. Are you experiencing life directly? Or are you experiencing your interpretation of life? Because if it is interpretation, then nothing outside you needs to change first. Only perception, only alignment, only awareness. And this is where everything begins to shift. Not through effort, but through recognition. Because the moment you see that nothing is missing, you stop searching in the wrong direction, and what you stop searching for, you begin to notice was never absent. Nothing is missing, only misaligned. And now that you can feel that truth, even slightly, we move deeper into the system that taught you otherwise. You have begun to see that separation is not real, only misalignment of perception. But this raises a deeper question. How did you ever come to believe that love, worth, and presence had to be earned in the first place? Chapter 2. The illusion of conditional worth was programmed into you. Before you go any further, slow your attention again. Because this chapter is not about learning something new. It is about noticing something that has been running your life silently for years, and once you see it clearly, it does not stay the same. You were not born believing you had to earn your worth. That belief was taught, carefully, repeatedly, indirectly, through tone, through expectation, through reward and withdrawal. And over time, it became invisible. Because the most powerful conditioning is the kind you no longer notice. Now listen closely to this one idea, because it will repeat throughout this entire chapter like an underlying frequency. Worth was assigned, not removed. Worth was assigned, not removed. Not lost, not broken, not taken away. Assigned by systems, environments, and interpretations that taught you how to measure yourself against conditions. Think back, not intellectually, but honestly. As early as you can remember, approval was not constant. It was given when you performed correctly, when you behaved correctly, when you achieved correctly, when you were easy, agreeable, impressive, successful, quiet, useful. And when those conditions were not met, something subtle changed. Attention shifted, tone changed, connection became uncertain. In the child mind, your early awareness did not interpret this as people have limits. It interpreted it as, I must adjust myself to remain worthy of connection. And that interpretation became identity. Pause here for a moment, because this is where most people miss the entire structure. They think worth is a feeling, but worth is actually a learned measurement system. A silent equation running in the background. If I do this, I am acceptable. If I achieve this, I'm valuable. If I become this, I will finally feel enough. And so life becomes a constant attempt to stabilize worth through external proof. But here is where the distortion deepens. Because even success does not break the system. It reinforces it. Let that land slowly. Even success reinforces conditional worth, not dissolves it. Think about how achievement actually feels in most cases. You reach a goal, and for a brief moment, there is relief. But almost immediately, the mind recalibrates. What's next? What's higher? What if I lose this? And suddenly, the achievement that was supposed to prove worth becomes proof that worth still requires maintenance. This is the psychological loop almost no one sees while they are inside it. Success does not end conditional worth programming. It upgrades it. It refines the standard. It raises the bar. It strengthens the belief that worth must be sustained through performance. And this is why even highly successful people often feel internally unstable, because the system is still running underneath. Now pause again and reflect slowly. Have you ever achieved something you once thought would change how you feel about yourself, only to discover that the feeling returned shortly after? That is not failure. That is evidence of programming. Worth was assigned, not removed. And because it was assigned externally, it keeps seeking external confirmation. Now here is the deeper psychological twist. The mind begins to confuse anxiety with motivation. It believes tension means progress. It believes pressure means growth. It believes discomfort means you are not there yet. But much of that tension is not growth. It is the friction of conditional identity trying to stabilize itself. Now take a slower breath here mentally, and just observe this possibility. What if your constant drive to prove yourself is not ambition, but an inherited attempt to restore a worth you never actually lost? This is where the entire internal system begins to reveal itself, because once you see the mechanism, you cannot fully unsee it. Now let's bring this into your lived experience. Think about moments of comparison. Seeing someone else succeed, seeing someone else appear ahead. The immediate emotional response is rarely neutral. It is contraction, because comparison is the fastest activation of conditional worth programming. It immediately asks, am I behind? Am I enough? Do I measure up? But none of those questions are actually about reality. They're about identity stabilization, and identity stabilization always depends on external measurement. Now here is the important shift. You are not broken because you think this way. You were trained to think this way. And anything that is trained can be untrained through awareness. Now we arrive at a quiet but important realization. If worth was truly conditional, it would be unstable by nature. It would always fluctuate. It would never feel fully secure. And that is exactly what most people experience. But here is the contradiction. Something in you still feels the desire for unconditional worth, not as an idea, but as a recognition, as if part of you remembers a state where worth was not negotiated. That recognition is not imagination. It is contrast, and contrast always points to something real. Now let this question sit gently in your awareness. Pause. When did you first believe you had to prove yourself? Not the story, not the explanation, the first feeling, the first moment where being you was not enough on its own. Do not rush to answer it, because the point is not memory. The point is recognition of the pattern. And once you see the pattern, you begin to see it everywhere it has shaped your choices without permission. And that is where awakening begins. Not in becoming something new, but in noticing what was never actually true. Worth was assigned, not removed. And now that you can sense how deeply this assignment has shaped perception itself, we move into the next layer of the system. You are beginning to see that worth was never something you earned. It was something you were conditioned to measure. But if worth is not actually conditional, then why does fear still feel like truth in the body? And why does source seem unresponsive when we operate from it? Chapter 3. Why source never responds to fear-based identity. Slow everything down again, not because this is complicated, but because what you are about to understand does not land through speed. It lands through recognition, and recognition requires space. There is a moment in every person's life where they start to believe something very subtle. If I try harder, maybe life will respond differently. If I think correctly, maybe things will shift. If I fix myself, maybe something outside me will finally open. But underneath all of that effort is a hidden assumption. That source responds to fear. That source responds to pressure. That source responds to urgency, anxiety, and struggle. And this is where the misunderstanding begins, because source does not respond to fear-based identity. Not because it is withholding anything, but because it is not operating in the same frequency band. Let that land slowly. Everything you experience is filtered through state, not words, not intentions, not effort. State, your emotional state, your identity state, your subconscious assumption of who you are being in that moment. And fear creates a very specific identity. It creates the identity of separation, the identity of urgency, the identity of something is missing and must be fixed. Now here is the subtle but critical shift. Source is not absent in fear, but fear is incompatible with recognition of source. Not morally incompatible, not spiritually punished, structurally incompatible. Because fear is a narrowing of perception, and source is expanded awareness. Fear says, I must survive. I am not safe yet. I need something external to change. But source, as a field of consciousness, does not operate through lack-based identity. It operates through reflection, and that changes everything. Most people imagine source as something that responds, like a system that reacts to input. Ask, arrow, receive. Pray, arrow, respond. Struggle leads to eventually rewarded, but that model keeps you trapped in a transactional understanding of reality. Here is the deeper mechanism. Source does not react to what you say. It reflects what you are. Let that settle. Not what you want, not what you hope. What you are. And what you are is not your thoughts. It is your dominant frequency state. So when fear is dominant, the reflection is not punishment. It is coherence. It is alignment with fear-based perception, which means the experience you receive is not random. It is consistent with the internal state generating it. Now pause here for a moment, because this is where most people feel resistance. They want source to override their state, to rescue them from their frequency. But that is not how coherence works. Reflection cannot contradict input. Otherwise, reality would become unstable, and it never is. It is always consistent, even when it feels painful, especially when it feels painful. Think about moments when you have tried to change something in your life. You focused, you visualized, you attempted to think positively. But underneath it, fear remained active. Fear of loss, fear of delay, fear of not being enough. And then you noticed something confusing. Nothing changed, or it changed temporarily, then returned. And the mind concludes, this must not be working. But what if the mechanism was never broken? What if it was perfectly consistent? What if it was simply reflecting your dominant internal signal? Now here is the deeper realization. You are not trying to receive differently. You are trying to override identity without changing identity. And that is impossible within a reflective system. Now here is where something begins to open. Because if source is reflective, then what is observing the reflection? What is aware of fear itself? What is noticing the identity you are currently inhabiting? There is a deeper layer of awareness here, a point in you that is not fully identified with fear, but can observe fear happening. This is not the mind. This is not thought. This is the observer. And we will go much deeper into this in Chapter 8. But for now, just notice something very simple. You're not fully inside every thought you have. Something in you is aware of the thought, and that awareness is not afraid in the same way. It simply sees, quietly, directly, without distortion. And this is where the shift begins to hint at itself. Because if there is an observer, then fear is not the totality of you. It is an experience inside you, not the source of you, not the identity of you. Just a frequency passing through awareness. Pause for a moment and consider this slowly. If source does not respond to fear-based identity, then everything you have been trying to force through fear has never actually been ignored. It has simply been reflected back as experience consistent with fear, not as rejection, but as coherence. Let that land. So now the real question becomes, are you trying to create your life from fear? Or are you willing to observe the state that is creating your experience? Because one keeps you inside repetition, and the other begins to introduce choice. Not choice of events, but choice of state. And state changes everything that follows. And now you begin to see the structure more clearly. If source is reflective and not reactive, then the real shift was never about trying harder or thinking differently. It was about moving out of fear-based identity altogether into a different mode of perception entirely. But to understand how deeply fear shapes experience, not just emotionally, but through distortion, shame, and self-perception, we must go deeper into the hidden emotional mechanism that most people never question. Chapter 4. The hidden mechanism behind shame and reality. Distortion. Slow your attention again. Because this chapter is not about shame as an emotion, it is about shame as a filter. And once you understand this distinction, you stop treating your inner world as something to fight and start recognizing it as something you are currently seeing through. Shame is not just a feeling that comes and goes. It is a contraction of perception, a narrowing of awareness, a tightening of identity into a smaller version of what you believe you are allowed to be. And when that contraction happens, your reality does not disappear. It gets filtered. Let that repeat inside you. Shame doesn't block life. It filters it. Shame doesn't block life. It filters it. Not once, but continuously, as long as it is active. Think of consciousness like an open field of awareness. When you are open, you see options. When you are expanded, you see possibility. When you are neutral, you see clarity. But when shame enters, something subtle happens. You stop seeing the full field. You begin to see only what confirms limitation, only what confirms inadequacy, only what reinforces the idea that something is wrong with you. Not because reality changed, but because your perceptual bandwidth narrowed. Shame is not loud, it is constrictive. It does not shout, it shrinks. And in that shrinking, entire possibilities disappear from your awareness without you ever realizing they were there. Let this anchor settle again. Shame doesn't block life. It filters it. This is not metaphor. It is functional experience. Because when shame is active, you do not walk into the same world as when shame is absent. You walk into a reduced version of it, a limited interpretation of it, a distorted selection of it. Now look at relationships. When shame is active in someone's identity, they do not simply have relationship problems. They perceive relationships through contraction. They interpret distance where there may be neutrality. They interpret silence as rejection. They interpret uncertainty as abandonment. And then they begin to behave from that interpretation, over-explaining, withdrawing, testing, seeking reassurance, or avoiding intimacy altogether. Not because the relationship is unsafe, but because shame has filtered how safety is perceived. And now the relationship becomes a mirror of the internal contraction, not the cause of it. Now look at money. Shame says, I am behind. I am not doing enough. I am not capable yet. And in that state, money stops being neutral energy or opportunity. It becomes a judgment system. Every financial decision becomes emotionally charged. Every opportunity feels like pressure. Every action feels like exposure. So instead of expansion, there is avoidance. Procrastination, overthinking, delay disguised as planning, but underneath it all, it is not lack of strategy, it is filtered perception. Because shame does not allow you to see clean opportunity. It only allows you to see risk tied to identity. Now look at health. When shame is active around the body stops being experienced as neutral intelligence. It becomes a problem to fix, a source of frustration, a reminder of not enough. And this creates a loop. You focus on the problem, leads to feel worse, leads to tighten more, leads to see more problems. Not because the body is worsening, but because perception is narrowing around dissatisfaction. Shame doesn't allow presence with the body. It only allows evaluation of it. And evaluation without neutrality creates distortion. Now step back and see the pattern across all areas. Relationships, money, health, self-worth. It is the same mechanism repeating. Shame contracts perception, and contracted perception produces a distorted version of reality, not externally altered reality, internally filtered reality. And this is why people feel stuck, while nothing external has fundamentally changed. Because what changed first was not life, it was perception of life. Pause here for a moment and ask yourself quietly, how much of what I call my situation is actually my filtered perception of it? Not the situation itself, but the way shame has shaped what I notice inside it. Let that sit. Do not rush past it, because this is where awareness begins to loosen the filter. Now, listen carefully, because this is the pivot point of the entire chapter. Whenever shame is active, there is always an opposite state available, not as fantasy, but as a perceptual reset. So ask yourself slowly and honestly, what is the opposite of this shame? Not in theory, not in logic, but in feeling. What would openness feel like here? What would neutrality feel like here? What would presence feel like here without judgment? Do not force an answer. Just let the question interrupt the contraction, because that interruption is where the filter begins to loosen. And as the filter loosens, something subtle begins to happen. You start seeing options you could not see moments before. You start noticing interpretations that were previously invisible. You start sensing that nothing outside you changed, but everything you are seeing has become less distorted. And that is the beginning of real shift, not change in life, but change in access to life. And now you begin to see something deeper emerging underneath all of this. If shame is a filter, and fear is a state of misalignment, then there must be a system beneath identity itself that keeps reinforcing the need for external validation, comparison, and constant proving. A loop that does not just affect emotion, but structures perception of reality itself. To understand why this loop never ends, and why most people unknowingly participate in it, we now move into the mechanism of external validation and identity dependency. Chapter 5. The matrix loop of external validation and why it never ends. Slow your attention again, because this chapter is not about success or failure. It is about the system underneath both. The invisible loop most people live inside without ever noticing they are inside it. And once you see it clearly, it stops operating in the same way. There is a pattern that begins early in life, so early that it feels natural, so repeated that it feels like truth, and so familiar that it becomes invisible. It is the pattern of external validation, approval, recognition, acceptance. Being seen as enough through someone else's response. And at first, it feels harmless, even necessary, because humans are social systems. We learn through feedback, we adjust through response, we calibrate through environment. But at some point, feedback stops being information and becomes identity. Let that land slowly. External validation operates on a hidden rule. It never resolves identity hunger. It only temporarily reduces tension. That's it. Not completion, not resolution, reduction. A brief softening of internal discomfort, and then the system resets. Because the hunger it is trying to satisfy is not situational. It is structural. It is not about achievement. It is about identity stability. So what happens? You receive approval. You feel relief. A moment of expansion appears. But shortly after, the mind begins recalibrating again. What's next? Can I maintain this? What if I lose it? And the loop begins again. Not because something is wrong, but because the system is designed to continue searching externally for what cannot be stabilized externally. Now here is the part that often feels counterintuitive. Even approval strengthens dependency. Let that sit without rushing it. When someone validates you, it does not close the loop. It reinforces the mechanism that says, "This is how I become okay." So instead of dissolving the need for validation, it deepens the expectation that validation is required for stability. The mind learns, this feeling came from outside, therefore it must continue to come from outside. And so approval becomes addictive in a very subtle way, not because it feels good, but because it temporarily suspends internal uncertainty. And the suspension becomes something the mind tries to repeat again and again. Now step back and see the structure. If identity is built on external response, then identity is always unstable, because external response is always changing. Different people, different contexts, different expectations, different standards. So the self becomes something that constantly adjusts, not because it is evolving, but because it is maintaining alignment with external measurement. And this is the core of the loop. You are not just seeking approval. You are using approval to stabilize who you think you are. And because approval is inconsistent, identity remains unstable. And because identity is unstable, more approval is sought, and the loop continues, quietly, continuously, without interruption. Pause here for a moment and notice something gently. How many of your decisions are shaped not by what you feel internally, but by how it will be perceived externally? Let that question sit without judgment, because awareness of the loop is the first crack in it. Here is the psychological paradox most people never see while they are inside it. The more external validation you receive, the more clearly you see the possibility of losing it. So instead of ending insecurity, it refines it. It makes the standard more visible. It sharpens awareness of comparison. It increases sensitivity to judgment. And so the system becomes more intelligent, but not more free. More responsive, but not more stable. And this is why even highly validated individuals often feel internally ungrounded, because the source of stability is still outside, underneath all of this. There is one silent question the mind is constantly asking. Am I okay as I am, without measurement? And external validation is the attempt to answer that question indirectly. But no external response can permanently answer an internal identity question. Because identity is not built externally, it is stabilized internally. Or it is constantly negotiated externally. There is no third option. Now here is where we arrive at the edge of something important. Because if identity is constantly shaped by external measurement, then what happens when measurement disappears? What happens when there is no comparison point, no approval system, no external reference to determine value? What remains when identity is no longer being continuously adjusted through outside feedback? What happens when you remove external measurement entirely? Do not rush this question, because it is not theoretical, it is structural. And the answer changes the way perception itself organizes. And now we begin to move towards something deeper. Because if external validation is a loop, and shame is a filter, and fear is a frequency mismatch, then there must be a point of awareness beneath all of these systems that is not dependent on any of them. A point where perception can exist without being shaped by external measurement at all. To understand that shift, we now enter the moment where awareness separates from identity itself and begins observing experience directly. Chapter 6. The neutral observer, shift that rewrites your experience. You may not have noticed this before, but there is a part of your experience that never actually participates in the chaos it observes. And the moment you start to see it, something very subtle begins to shift, not in your circumstances, but in your relationship to everything happening inside you. Right now, as you listen, thoughts may be appearing in the background, maybe about what you need to do later, maybe about something you remember, maybe even thoughts about this very moment. And for most of your life, you have been trained to do something automatic with those thoughts. You become them. You step inside them without noticing the movement. And suddenly, a thought is not just a thought anymore. It becomes you. But pause here. Because something in you is already aware of the thought appearing, not as the thought itself, but as the awareness of the thought. And that awareness is not rushing. It is not arguing. It is not trying to fix anything. It is simply noticing, quietly, continuously, almost like a space everything is happening inside of. You are not inside your thoughts. You are observing them. And at first, this may sound simple, almost too simple. But simplicity is often what the mind overlooks the fastest, because the mind is used to involvement, identification, reaction, meaning-making. So it takes something neutral, like a thought, and turns it into identity. I am anxious. I am behind. I am not enough. But notice something very carefully here. The thought appears first, and then there is awareness of it. Two different things. One is movement. The other is the space in which movement is seen. And you are not the movement. You are the space. Now stay with this for a moment. Because if you are truly inside your thoughts, you would not know you are having them. There would be no distance, no reflection, no recognition. But there is recognition, which means there is already separation between awareness and what awareness is noticing. And in that separation, something very important becomes possible. Thoughts begin to lose their authority, not because they disappear, but because they are no longer fused with identity. A thought like "something is wrong" no longer automatically defines reality. It becomes something much simpler, just a signal passing through awareness, just a mental event, just movement. And when thought stops being identity, something subtle happens inside experience. Space appears, not physical space, perceptual space. A gap between what arises and what you automatically believe. And in that gap, you are no longer reacting instantly. There is a pause, even if it is very small, even if it is barely noticeable at first. That pause is everything, because that pause is where the observer exists, not as a concept, but as direct experience, the part of you that is aware of thinking without becoming the thought itself. Now notice something else. You do not have to create this observer. You are not building it, you are recognizing it, because it has been here the entire time, even when you were overwhelmed, even when you were emotional, even when life felt unclear. Something in you was still aware of all of it happening. Not judging it, not stopping it, just seeing it. And that seeing is not fragile. It does not break when thoughts intensify. It does not disappear when emotions rise. It remains, quiet, present, unmoved by content. Now slowly consider this. If thoughts come and go, and emotions come and go, and experiences come and go, but awareness of all of it does not come and go in the same way, then what exactly are you identifying as? Because most suffering is not caused by thoughts themselves. It is caused by forgetting this distance. Forgetting that you are not inside what you are observing. You are the one observing it. And when that is forgotten, every thought feels like a command. Every emotion feels like truth. Every moment feels personal. But when it is remembered, even briefly, everything loosens. Thoughts can still appear, but they do not grip you in the same way. Emotions can still rise, but they do not define you in the same way. Life can still move, but it does not collapse your identity every time it shifts. Now gently bring this question into awareness without forcing an answer. What if thoughts were not truth at all, but simply signals passing through awareness? Not instructions, not identity, not reality. Just movement happening within something far larger and quieter than the mind. And if that were true, then you would not need to fight your thoughts. You would not need to obey them either. You would simply see them, and in seeing them clearly, you would no longer be fully inside them. And that changes everything, because once you are no longer fully inside the thought, you are no longer fully inside the fear. You are no longer fully inside the story. You are no longer fully inside the limitation. You are here as awareness itself. And from here, everything that appears is just something being noticed, not something defining you. And as this becomes clearer, even in small moments, something begins to reorganize itself in your experience. Not because reality changed outside you, but because your position within it has shifted. And from this position, what you call life begins to feel different. Less like something happening to you, and more like something appearing within you. And now, as this recognition settles, a deeper layer begins to open. Because if you are not your thoughts, then what else have you been identifying with that was never truly you in the first place? Chapter 7. How unconditional self-love reorganizes reality around you. Slow down here. Because what you are about to understand is not something you apply on the surface of life. It is something that changes the assumption you are living from. Most people think self-love is an emotion they try to generate, a feeling they chase, a mindset they repeat. But that is not what is happening at the deeper level. Self-love is not emotional decoration on top of your life. It is the instruction your perception is running on. And what you hold as true about yourself becomes the filter through which everything is interpreted. If, deep down, you hold the belief that you are behind, life will always appear like something you are catching up to. If, deep down, you hold the belief that you are not enough yet, life will always present itself as a test you have not passed. But if something in you begins to hold a quieter assumption, not forced, not affirmed, but recognized, that you are already fundamentally worthy as you are, something subtle begins to shift in how reality is organized around you. Not instantly, not dramatically, but consistently. Because perception stops organizing everything around correction and starts organizing everything around expression. Now notice this carefully. You do not start acting from lack in the same way. You do not interpret uncertainty as rejection in the same way. You do not measure every moment as a verdict on your worth in the same way. There is more space, more neutrality, more room for experience to simply be what it is without immediately turning into a judgment about you. And in that space, something important begins to happen. You stop trying to become worthy through experience and start experiencing life from the assumption that worth is already present. And that single shift reorganizes everything, not because the outside world is instantly different, but because you are no longer selecting reality through the lens of deficiency. Now everything begins to respond differently to you, not because reality is changing its rules, but because your internal signal has changed, and reality has always been responding to that signal. And as this stabilizes even slightly, you begin to notice something very simple. Effort starts to feel different. Decisions start to feel clearer. Certain situations no longer feel necessary to stay in, not through force, but through mismatch. Because when self-love becomes the baseline, anything built on self-rejection starts to feel unnatural to maintain. And slowly, without forcing anything, your life begins to reorganize itself around a different internal truth. One that no longer begins with, "I am not enough yet," but with something quieter, something steadier, "I am already here." And from that place, everything begins to move differently. And now, as this becomes clearer, we move into the next layer. Chapter 8. The quantum role of emotional frequency and choice points. Slow down again. Because what you are about to notice is not about imagination, and it is not about belief. It is about how experience actually organizes itself in real time. Most people assume they are moving through one fixed reality, one stable timeline, one continuous line of cause and effect. But what is actually happening is far more subtle than that. Every emotional shift you experience is not just a feeling passing through you. It is a shift in the way reality is being selected through your perception. When fear becomes dominant, the world does not just feel different, it appears differently. Certain possibilities disappear from awareness. Certain outcomes feel more likely. Certain interpretations become automatic. Not because the external world has changed in that moment, but because your emotional state is filtering what you are able to perceive as available. Now notice this carefully. When your emotional state shifts, even slightly, your sense of what is possible also shifts. What felt closed a moment ago can begin to feel open again. What felt overwhelming can begin to feel manageable. What felt distant can begin to feel reachable. Same external conditions, different internal selection, and this is the part most people miss. You are not experiencing reality first and then reacting to it. You are selecting from it continuously through emotional frequency. And that selection happens before conscious thought fully forms. So what you call decisions are often the result of a deeper process already taking place beneath awareness. Emotional frequency determines perception. Perception determines interpretation. Interpretation determines action. And action reinforces the version of reality you continue to experience. Now pause here, because this is where a subtle realization begins to form. If emotional states are continuously shaping what you perceive as possible, then every moment contains a kind of quiet turning point. Not dramatic, not obvious, but present. A point where a shift in state can redirect what you are able to see next. And this is why small internal changes often create larger external shifts over time. Not because reality is randomly responding, but because perception is continuously reorganizing what it allows you to notice. Now bring your attention inward for a moment and observe something very simple. You are not stuck in one emotional state permanently. It moves, it changes, it fluctuates, and in that fluctuation, different versions of experience become available to you. This is not imagination. This is selection. And the more clearly you see this, the less automatic your identification becomes with any single emotional state. You begin to notice fear without becoming it. You begin to notice doubt without obeying it. You begin to notice expansion without needing to force it. And in that noticing, something very important opens. A space between stimulus and response. A space where choice becomes visible. Not external choice, internal reorientation. The ability to shift how experience is being filtered in real time. And as this becomes clearer, you start to recognize something else quietly operating in the background. That what you call your life is not fixed. It is continuously being assembled through attention, emotion, and interpretation. Moment by moment. Selection by selection. State by state. And now the question naturally begins to arise. What happens when you learn to recognize the moment before selection happens? What happens when you begin to notice the shift in emotional frequency as it forms? Because in that moment, you are no longer fully inside the automatic process. You are aware of it. And awareness changes everything that follows. And as this recognition deepens, we move into the next layer, Chapter 9. Breaking the identity of not enough at the root level. Slow everything down here. Because this chapter is not about improving your self-worth. It is about recognizing the structure that creates the feeling of not enough in the first place. And once you see the structure clearly, you stop trying to fix what was never actually broken. The identity of not enough does not begin as a truth. It begins as repetition, as conditioning, as interpretation layered over experience so many times that it begins to feel like reality itself. At some point, the mind stops questioning it. It becomes the default assumption. I am not enough yet. I need to become more. I need to fix something before I can feel whole. And from that single assumption, an entire way of living is constructed. Striving begins. Comparison begins. Self-correction becomes constant. Not because you are failing, but because the identity underneath everything is built on incompleteness. Now notice this carefully. Even success does not interrupt this structure. It often strengthens it. Because success does not resolve the underlying assumption. It often expands the standard. So the mind learns something subtle. If I achieve this, then I must achieve more to stay here. And the identity of not enough remains intact, just more sophisticated, more refined, more convincing. And so the loop continues, striving, achieving, adjusting, repeating, not because you are broken, but because the starting point has never changed. Now pause here for a moment and gently observe what happens when you consider this. What if the feeling of not enough is not a truth you are discovering, but a lens you are seeing through? Because if it is a lens, then it is not fixed. It is not you. It is something being applied to experience. And anything that is being applied can be seen. And anything that can be seen can begin to loosen. Now something subtle begins to emerge here. When striving is fully examined, it starts to reveal its hidden motivation. Not growth, not expansion, but escape. Escape from the feeling of incompleteness. Escape from the discomfort of not yet being there. And as this becomes visible, striving begins to lose some of its automatic power. Not because ambition disappears, but because unconsciousness is no longer fully driving it. Now let this question land slowly. What identity remains when striving stops? Do not rush to answer it, because the mind will immediately try to fill the space with a new goal, a new version, a new improvement. But this question is not asking for a new identity. It is asking what is left when identity built on lack is no longer being reinforced. And in that space, something unfamiliar begins to appear. Not urgency, not correction, but presence. And from presence, the entire structure of not enough begins to lose its foundation, not through effort, but through recognition. And as this recognition settles, we move into the final expansion. Chapter 10. Living as Source in Human Form, the Final Expansion. Slow everything down now. Not because there is something to figure out, but because this is where understanding stops being mental and starts becoming experiential. Throughout everything you have moved through, one pattern has been quietly dissolving. The belief that life is something you must constantly correct. Correct your thoughts. Correct your emotions. Correct your timing. Correct your worth. Correct your path. But in this final recognition, something very different begins to settle in. Life is not correction. It is expression. And expression does not require you to be fixed first. It requires you to be present. Now notice this carefully. When you are no longer interpreting every moment as a test of your worth, something subtle opens. Experience becomes less heavy, less personal, less contracted around identity. Thoughts still arise. Emotions still move. Life still changes. But you are no longer collapsing into every movement as if it defines you. There is space now, space between what happens and what you are. And in that space, reactivity begins to soften on its own, not through control, but through recognition. You begin to notice thoughts without becoming them. You begin to feel emotions without being consumed by them. You begin to engage life without using it as a measurement of your value. And something very quiet begins to emerge underneath all of it. A stable sense of presence that does not depend on conditions. Not emotional intensity, not external validation, not achievement, just awareness. And in that awareness, life begins to reorganize itself in a very different way. Not because you are forcing change, but because you are no longer resisting what is already unfolding. Action becomes lighter. Choices become clearer. Timing becomes more natural. Not because you are trying harder, but because you are no longer operating from lack. Now everything begins to feel less like pursuit and more like participation. Less like becoming, and more like expressing. And as this continues to settle, you begin to notice something even more subtle. That what you once thought of as you, the striving identity, the correcting identity, the not enough identity, was never the full truth of you. It was a layer of interpretation. And underneath that layer, there has always been awareness. Present, unchanging, aware of everything arising within it. And from this recognition, a very simple understanding remains. You are not becoming source. You are recognizing what has always been here. And from that recognition, life is no longer something you need to fix before you can live it fully. It is something you participate in fully, because you are already here. And now, from this place, there is nothing left to chase. Only presence to remain in, only awareness to rest in, only life to live as it is unfolding. And that is the final expansion. You now see something that cannot be unseen. You are not separate from source. You never were. Every moment you believed you were disconnected was a moment of perception, not reality. And now you understand the mechanism clearly. When you believe you must earn love, you enter contraction. When you believe you are already held by unconditional awareness, you expand. And in that expansion, your entire experience begins to reorganize itself. Not because you forced it, but because you stopped resisting it. So here is what matters now. Do not turn this into another concept. Do not store this as information. Let it become a lived frequency. The next time shame appears, observe it. The next time lack appears, question it. The next time you feel behind, pause and remember what you just learned. You're not behind anything. You're inside a shifting perception field that responds to your internal state. And now you have the key. So the real question becomes, will you continue to live as someone trying to become worthy? Or will you finally live as the awareness in which worth was never missing? Because from this moment forward, nothing outside you needs to change first. The shift begins in recognition, and recognition changes everything. If this message resonated, your only task now is simple. Stop negotiating your worth. Start embodying the frequency of what you already are, and live from there, starting now.